Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Schimmel, and you're watching the Platform Engineering Show. Let me introduce you to my co-host. Where is Luca today? But Luca Galente. Luca, how are you?
I'm good and still in Sri Lanka. So I haven't moved.
Still in Sri Lanka, but a different background.
Different background, yeah. It's a hotel room. I was hoping there was going to be a table. Instead, I'm like in a like closet holding the
Okay,
computer.
well,
But, yeah,
it's that it doesn't. Well, it's blurred, so you can't see. But all right,
yeah,
we won't make you stand too long, hopefully.
yeah.
But where are you heading from? We'll do a little travel update
A
from
little, a
Sri
little travel
Lanka. Where?
section. Yeah, we should have
Yeah,
our own like travel segment every time, right? And then
follow Luca.
like
Uh,
no, so yeah, Maldives for the next 3 days, and then Japan. So the next time I think we're going to speak is going to be from Japan.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I would like to. That's the place I haven't been to either. Is Japan. I was thinking about going for the KubeCon there in June. I just
Yeah.
don't know. I've got a lot of travel in May and June. I've got the RSA conference, and then I'm doing a trip to Italy myself, and we'll see. Anyway, let's talk platform engineering, though.
As
Uh,
what?
yep, it's been. You know, we are hearing more and more and more about platform engineering, but what I'm encouraged about is you used to just hear platform engineering, right? It was like this monolith, if you will. It like
Yeah.
all encompassing. But now, as we're starting, it's been maturing more. It's more widely accepted in the market, and people are understanding it. We're looking at the different aspects of platform engineering because it's not a monolith like anything else. When you get up close, you find out there's different pieces of it. Today, we want to talk about MVP, not most valuable player, but and not minimum viable product, but minimum viable platform. Luca, educate us. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, and I think your intro was spot on, right? Because I think the minimum viable platform framework is a great example of, I think, broadly the platform engineering space really maturing, especially in the last 18 to 24 months, where we've spoken before about reference architectures and how those have been like a big game changers for the community and the space broadly in terms of really helping people visualize, okay, what does an enterprise grade internal developer platform actually looks like? But the issue with that was that then people had this kind of like target architecture that they wanted to build, and it's like, okay, let's go build it, and they wanted to build it all at once, and that's where a lot of teams got stuck. In fact, I would say the majority of platform engineering initiatives that I've seen dying was mostly because of a loss of momentum, right? At the end of the day, as we said, right, like platform engineering is very complex org transformation that touches all these different stakeholder groups. So you need to convince, the app devs and the security teams and the architects and all these people. And you go person A, B, C, D. By the time you got to person Z, person A forgot about you because it's been 6 months, and and that's how you lose momentum. And so the minimum viable platform framework was kind of developed from the community to help with that and to make sure that you followed this minimum viable product, approach, right? And this is also, I think, an interesting thing that we discussed previously, right? This like idea of platform as a product as one of the foundational concepts of the platform engineering space. And again, the moment you look at your platform as a product, as an internal product that you're developing, you automatically unlock all these product management best practices that we've all learned in the last couple of decades. And one of those is MVP, or minimum viable product, which applied to the platform is just the minimum viable platform. And the idea there is to look at these reference architectures, right? And instead of trying to build everything at once, you really like focus on a subset of that reference architectures. And the idea is to really iterate quickly on it and keep getting more and more buy-in from the stakeholders. So you don't have to focus on all the stakeholders at once. You don't have to focus on all the different sides of your infrastructure, on all the different aspects of your applications. You just strategically select different parts of that and then show value there first and then iterate from there.
Excellent. Well, there's a lesson here I remember from DevOps as well. But when DevOps first came on, it was very rare that you'd have sort of an enterprise-wide DevOps rollout. Mm-hmm. I used to say DevOps got done in bubbles. And if you've ever seen like soap bubbles or bubbles in the bath when you're a kid, maybe not when you're a kid if you like bubble baths, but you get a lot of little bubbles, and when those bubbles touch on each other, they become a little bigger, and then eventually you get those big bubbles, right, that you could catch. It's the same thing when you look at how DevOps spreads in an enterprise. Generally, it starts as little bubbles. There's a little project here, a little project there. But it's the same thing with minimum viable platform. An important part of it is momentum, right? No one wants to go with a loser. Everybody wants to be with the winner. So if you can build some small wins, you get some wins that people can point to and say, hey, look, it works. Hey, look, it helped us do that. It made that go faster. It made this more secure. People want to give me some of that. I want some of that good stuff, right? I want that, right? Or more of it. And that's how you get buy-in across an enterprise. That's how you get those bubbles, right? Creating bigger bubbles.
Yeah, and I think it's very important also to, figure out what is it that people want, right? Because again, if you're trying to make everybody happy, that's really hard, right? So you should really just focus, okay, what are the one or two stakeholder groups that are really crucial for this initial phase to prove value? And then understand, okay, what do they want? Because, if I go to developers and talk about we're going to cut time to market with this MVP, they don't care. It's not something that they necessarily think about, right? But, executives care about that. Application developers might care about reducing waiting times, right? And so you just need to understand, okay, what are those two initial wants and desires that I'm going to target with this MVP? And then to your point, create those first bubbles, right? And then go back to them and be like, look at these bubbles. They're great. They're shiny, right? And then they're like, all right, I want more of those. And that's when you start adding more and more and more. And that is why, so just taking a step back, right? The MVP framework is a framework because it has very specific sort of different phases of it, right? Particularly, there's 4 phases. There's a discovery phase, and this is why I think this discovery phase is so important. And it's exactly to do what we just said, right? To really map out what are the desires of people, what are the challenges that I want to solve. And again, I think a lot of people, a lot of platform teams get stuck in, trying to have this very quantitative, measurable type of things that they want to improve on. I think especially in the MVP phase, it can really be qualitative, right? We've talked about before, of hey, it can literally be hey, person X is spending, 20% of their time on, fielding ticket ops, or, it approximately takes us a couple of weeks. Anyway, this waiting time is really long. It sucks, right? And so that can be the starting point. And then you just go back to the same stakeholder and look, now you don't have to wait weeks. You can, it's instant, or you just need to wait a few minutes or a few hours, right? That's already an insane improvement. And then from there, you build on top of that and you professionalize and you get, more secure in everything. And so this is why that first discovery phase is really, really important. Then the second phase is, so it's discovery, then integration, which is really, basically, hooking in all the different parts that of the sub part of your reference architectures that you decided to target with your MVP. If for people that are familiar with that, otherwise we can also link it somewhere in the show notes. The reference architectures have 5 different planes, right? A developer control plane, which is effectively the front end of your platform, an integration delivery plane, which is the back end. Then you have a resources plane, which is, all the infrastructure that your platform sits on top of. And then you have a security plane and observability plane. In most successful MVPs that I've seen, people mostly focus on the first three, right? You need some front end, you need some back end, and you need some resources. You should keep all those things to a minimum. You probably don't really need, security or observability in the first phase. You obviously need to design with that in mind, but a first MVP doesn't need to show, ultra secure anything, right? Because it's just an MVP. It's working in dev, like there's no production workloads on it and so on. So and so that's really like the integration phase is about integrating those different pieces that you've kind of like singled out. Then you start deploying your first applications, right? And that's where you see, okay, everything is working. And then number 4 is the sort of like demo time, right? Which is also very, very important because it connects back to phase 1 where you first went to people and like, hey, what do you want? Then you need to now go back to them and it's like, hey, I actually did what you wanted, right? Or close to it. And that's where the loop, starts, the flywheel starts going.
The infinity, yeah.
So the magic happens, yeah.
So, when I hear you describe this, Luca, to me, I think one of the most important things, and you know what? It's a lesson I've learned over and over and over again in 35 years of doing tech work. Defining success is important. And a lot of engineers, I guess it's the way their brain is wired. They define success exactly the way you said, right? It has to be some metric, some KPI that I measure, right? And it's like, I improved, mean time to remediate by 38% or whatever. Yeah. But sometimes success is a feeling as much as it's a number, right? Sometimes it's a success is just, hey, I'm getting more done, I feel like, or I've got a better life balance. I've got, there's a lot of ways of defining success. The important thing is that everybody agrees on what the definition of success is, right? And then when you get to stage 4 and loop back, you can say, okay, this is what we said success was going to be. Here's the reality, right? And do they match up?
Yeah. And this is why I think platform engineering is so challenging for that kind of profile of engineer, right? Is because really, much more of a cultural challenge than a technical challenge. And the problem is that a lot of times it gets approached as, a 98% technical challenge and maybe like 2% of culture thing like sprinkled on top. And it's really almost the other way around. Like I've never seen a platform engineer or broadly this type of org transformation, fail because of a technical, choice of like this technology over this other technology. It's always because you didn't convince the right people. You didn't get developer adoption.
There wasn't a meeting of the minds on what's success. And to define it. I think another big problem, though, and I'm interested in your take on it, Luca, is the M, the minimum part.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a Goldilocks. Sometimes it's too minimum. Sometimes that minimum is like a maximum, right? I think it's important to really, it's got to be meaningful, right? It can't be trivial. It's got to be meaningful, but it's not supposed to be the whole enchilada. You know what I mean? It's minimum. Absolutely. How do you balance that?
Yeah. So I think, again, if you follow the framework, the idea is that, the MVP needs to be representative, right? And sort of like repeatable as well, like to your point of the bubbles, right? But, it also doesn't have to be a bunch of different things, right? It doesn't have to work for high compliance scenarios. It doesn't have to cover any advanced architecture. It doesn't have to do any sort of like advanced resource configurations, right? And the problem, to your point, is that, platform teams and engineers have this tendency of like slipping things into it, because it's cool, because you never know, And at the end of the day, I think it's just like, I've seen, successful platform teams really going through this process of almost, the samurai sword folding thing, right? Where it's just every time you cut it in half again, and you just ask like 10 times, like, do we really need this? Do we really need, 2 different databases for this to be a representative? Do we really need, all these different, different policies as code. No, and every time, and it's amazing because even teams that I think like consider themselves like quite frugal in terms of like, picking this like minimum set, end up like cutting another 50% of fat, basically, by just asking it enough times. And so I think that's where it's important to either have somebody external as you're going through that has experience doing this, or have like a really strong platform product manager internally that really keeps asking the same questions over and is not afraid of asking the same question over and over again, even if it's to like very experienced engineers. And it's like, no, but are you really sure, right? And then like really pushing the envelope internally.
Absolutely. Wanted to ask you about another thing here. When we talk about minimum, MVP, what is the team behind it? I think we're all familiar with the Amazon 2 pizza concept, right? If more than 2 pizzas, it's too big. Spotify has sort of the squad or whatever it was called. Remember, what's the right size team for a minimum viable platform engagement, or is it just really varies?
The right, you mean team, the platform team? Yeah. So it definitely varies. I think on this, depending on the scope. I think for me, what's important is not necessarily the size, but that there are different roles, or at least different functions clearly represented within the team, right? So as an example, right, and we can also throw up this sort of like really nice bubble-like visualization of platform teams and the different stakeholders around it. But in general, you have 4 key functions, like the head of platform, the platform product manager, and then what we call, and it's funny because they're really like emerging now as like very defined roles by Gartner, for example. There are job ads that are having this title, which are infrastructure platform engineer and developer experience or DevX platform engineer. And the point is, you don't need 4 different people with those 4 titles. A lot of times, the head of platform is doing the product role or the other, or vice versa. And in some cases, you just have a platform team of like 2 or 3 people. And so like everybody's like kind of like covering all bases. In some cases, you have like a platform team, there are like 100 people. And then it's not even that you have 4 different people. You have like 4 different, or like you have like many different teams and product teams, and each team has like those roles represented one way or the other. So regardless of the scale, the important thing is that there is this, I think, these functions that interface themselves with the different stakeholders. So, the head of platform is really responsible for selling this thing internally, ultimately, right? And so, getting the executive,
is he selling up, down, or both?
Yeah, mostly up, I would say, right? So really like to executives, but also across to like legal and compliant, like architects to an extent. And then you have, and I do think that the line between the head of platform and the platform product manager is quite blurry, right? But then you have the platform product manager that is, I think, the most important role, right? Because it's really about mediating all the different inbound requests / vested interests of all these different stakeholder groups, right? So you need to, balance all this stuff. And it's really, I think, the most critical one, and also the most in-demand role and the hardest to find, I think, right now in the market. And then you have this like DevX and infrastructure platform engineer. And I think the differentiation there is really important to have. Again, not necessarily as a title, but at least as an area of focus for different people, or even for the same person, but it needs to be like a very conscious, like, okay, I need to cover both of these things. Why? Because I think a lot of platform teams have this tendency to over-optimize, over-index on DevX, because ultimately the end user of the platform is the application developer. And so, okay, that's the whole point of the platform. But if you don't connect your platform engineering initiative to the to the overall infrastructure, and you don't sell it to your infrastructure and operations teams, it's doomed, I think, or very, very quickly, right? So that's where it's very important that you have, yes, the DevX platform engineer that maybe comes from that background to really build a tight feedback loop with developers and, find the right level of abstraction, the right level of context, the right interface to the platform for developers. But then it's very, very important that somebody's building, together with the infrastructure and operations team, the connection of the platform to the underlying infrastructure stack, right? And also that is selling effectively the platform to the I&O teams as a way of effectively, hey, this is a vending machine layer, basically, right? For you to provide your infrastructure to the rest of the organization in a much more productive way where, you don't have to fill ticket ops and getting annoyed and everything is like standardized and automated by design, yada, yada, right? So whether you have, different people, 200 people or two, the important thing is that you're, consciously thinking about those different...
have those roles.
Yeah.
It's important that those roles are, those are kind of indispensable roles. Let me ask you a question, Luca. When you say, DevX or working with developers, it's in today's world, it's not just the guy who's maybe coding, but is like, for instance, the QA person, the test person, right? They have a real stake in this too, because they've got to test all this stuff, right? Hopefully before they deploy it. But but on the platform nevertheless. So would the dev person also work with, like, for instance, QA or security testing or, other people along that CI/CD journey, if you will, who are involved in the pipeline or in the factory, right? These are all factory, if you think of software as a factory, these are all the people working in the factory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think right now, we're still in the phase where I think software, most of the times, like we spoke about in the first episode, is produced as if you were in this like craftsman type of like boutique thing, and so I do think as we're getting more industrialized as an industry, then you will lose touch points, or rather the touch points. We had this like really interesting conversation with Kelsey at PlatformCon 24, where he was talking about this, like, silos are a good thing, and all these people got mad. But the important thing is that you have like a platform layer in between the silos that facilitates that communication whenever it's needed. But the point is, it's not needed all the time, right? And I think that's ultimately what then increases, to your point, the developer experience, and frankly, everyone's experience, right? Because you don't have to, you just remove all this friction from the system, right? You can like focus on what you do best, what you want to do. Like, you want to code, you don't want to necessarily, spend 30% of your time configuring stuff. And so then you can do that. And then when you need, edge case or whatever, then, you have like off-path options beyond whatever the platform normally mediates.
Yep. Let me shift gears a little if we can, Luca. Okay, so let's say we follow the 4 steps and everyone says, great job, bravo, let's take it to the next level. What comes after MVP?
So the way we think about it, whether with our products or in the community, is production readiness after that, right? Because really, the MVP is not meant to be production ready. So it's really meant to like basically get everybody, rallied up. It's like, yes, this is great. We can totally see the benefit. Let's invest more time. Let's invest more money. But really, more than anything, let's invest more time and resources, right? Because that's the hardest thing to get in enterprises, is not necessarily the, extra money. It's just like, you can invest an extra like, $200K or whatever. But if you don't have the developers who are keen to actually keep working on this, it's not going to go anywhere as an initiative, right? So that's really the main thing. And so then the next phase is really, okay, how do we, and again, it's like a very structured kind of like production readiness checklist, basically, of like, okay, what are all the things that you now need to make this first minimum viable platform actually ready? And again, this is very important because Here again, we're not talking about, okay, bring your entire, software estate or cloud native setup, to production readiness. It's again just like one subset, usually one or two applications with a subset of their normal dependencies, but they're now, production grade, right? And that's really where you start getting the traction of like other teams looking at, okay, they're, that team is actually deploying all the way to production, and it's taking them like 30-40% less. And then that's where you go back to your bubbles of, then you grow from there. And so then from there is, the third phase will basically be production readiness to, sort of like full rollout.
Cool. Hey, we only got a few minutes left, but I want to kind of wrap a bow around this for people watching. We mentioned the reference architectures, and they're all available on platformengineering.org, right? Free, you can download them. The MVP framework is also available on platformengineering.org. You're free to anyone there to download and ask questions from and stuff like that. Speaking of people who have questions, does the community Slack from platformengineering.org? I forget, is there a Discord server now too, or is it just Slack?
No, just Slack. Just Slack, yeah.
This is the way to go. While we're at it, we were talking earlier about KubeCon and some of the other events coming up. Obviously, PlatformCon is next June, so we're still maybe 6 months, 5 months out of that. But for KubeCon, for people who want to be involved in the community, you have you guys have an event going on. You want to just let people know about it?
Yeah. The big party. And I'll just say before that, on PlatformCon, that's, also people can just go register now, platformcon.com. These reference architectures, we launched the first time, the first talk about them was at PlatformCon 23. Last year at PlatformCon 24, already 20+% of all the talks had these reference architectures as a blueprint. So I'm expecting that to grow even further. And actually, we now started building on platformengineering.org a repository of all the talks / articles / new community contributions of people that want to share their reference architectures for their platform. And so it's starting to grow and it's becoming a really interesting library. So I recommend people checking that out as well. The party is House of Cube, so you can go on houseofcube.com. I don't think the design. I think the design is going to be updated by the time the people listen to this, which is a new branding for the event, which is really cool. It's something that started as a joke in Valencia.
These things often do.
Yeah, because we just wanted to do like a better, more fun party. And it's basically grown to be this like unofficial opening party for KubeCon. We're expecting over 4,000 registrations for the London one. And we've actually taken out like a proper club. And I can't say who it is, but we have actually one of our front-end engineers is a very, it's a like literally globally famous DJ. That is he's a resident in one of the best Berlin clubs, travels every week to like, Mexico, India, whatever, just plays like big shot. And he's actually going to headline, although not with his normal DJ name because he can't use that.
Okay.
But he's gonna headline the event. So we've been basically saying about, hey, this is like a techno party, and then every time, because it's still like a party attached to like a working conference. So we always like did it, but not all the way. This way, this time it's
we're doing it this year.
We're going all the way. It's like a proper warehouse, proper DJ, so it's gonna be fun.
Very cool. Houseofcube.com.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Hey, Luca, enjoy your last few days there in Sri Lanka. Enjoy the Maldives. We'll catch you in Japan.
Yeah.
Where we'll be holding samurai.
Exactly.
Steel.
Exactly. You'll catch me
it takes steel to make steel, right? All right. Luca Galante, platformengineering.org. Or here on the Platform Engineering Show, whether you're watching this on TechStrong TV or platformengineering.com or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We hope you enjoy it. Subscribe to it. Until next time, this is Alan Schimmel and Luca Galante. We're out.